Hello, everyone. Hello, I'm Dr. Ajagun-Ogunleye, Olufemi Mulkah of the Medical Biochemistry Department, Lagos State University College of Medicine, Ikeja, Lagos. I'm here to present to you research proposal writing. Research proposal writing, structure, strategy, and scientific rigor. What is a research proposal? It is a formal document outlining your planned research work. It demonstrates feasibility, originality, and scholarly contribution. It is required for academic approval, funding, or ethical clearance. When when there is no plan, there is no project. If you fail to plan, that means you are planning to finish the sentence. So meaning it is very, very essential that you write a research proposal, whatever research you want to embark on. So these are the major sections of a research proposal. Consists of a title, an abstract, research background, research questions, methodology or materials and methods, study significance, timeline, and references. So under the title, this has to do with your keywords. Your area of interest, you should develop keywords. So from the keywords, you can craft a very good title. However, note that the title is very flexible. It can change during the course of your study. Your abstract is a summary of your research proposal, usually concise, between 150 to 300 words. Your research background or introduction is just like a literature review. You must have a seed paper, that is a paper that you are very much interested in, a recent paper. Now you do some analysis of that literature, that is the article. You can utilize resources like your SciSpace or Research Rabbit to analyze a literature review. Research Rabbit can link you to similar papers. From that, your seed paper, you can get similar papers that can be relevant during your course of writing your proposal. You're going to need all those in your introduction. So what literature are you working with? It has to be current. What is the present state of knowledge in that area of your study? What is your own position? What is your stand? Is it relevant? Is it recent? And from there, you are going to get a research gap. From the research gap, you can craft research questions. Now, your research question. These are ways by which you are going to be, what your aims, okay? From your gap, you're going to craft out research questions. Here, you are going to tell us, what are your aims? It must be new, it must be original, okay? Now we move on to your research methodology or materials and methods. This is the most important aspect of your proposal because you are going to define the approach you are going to use to answer those research questions. How exactly are you going to address all those research objectives or research questions? Are you going to use a qualitative or quantitative or mixed methods? Why? You're going to tell us. You're going to justify your methods. You're going to consider also the limitation of your study, and there you must have a plan B. Still under your methods, you're going to have data analysis, how you intend to analyze your data, the data that you have collected, the software you're going to be using, is it SPSS or GraphPad Prism. Now, what is the significance of your study? If you don't do this study, what will happen? How is this study relevant? What is so special? What is so important about your study? You must let us know how it is unique. What new thing are you bringing to the table? Will the sky fall if you don't do this study? So you are going to tell us the significance of your study. We move on to timeline. For example, maybe you're spending 3 or 4 years in your study. So you're going to tell us maybe in your first year, second year, how you are going to utilize each of those years to achieve your research, the aims in your research proposal. maybe your year one, you are going to gather, you're going to do some preliminary investigation. Maybe at a particular point, you'll be collecting data. You'll be analyzing your data for result presentations and so on and so forth. You need to tell us what you are going to be doing specifically and structurally. And then your references, this is just like your bibliography. You're going to be citing all those in-text references you have made in the body of your write-up. You're going to cite them, you're going to reference them completely here. And you can utilize reference managers like Zotero, EndNote, or Mendeley. Now, the key components of a research proposal. We have the section and the purpose. Like we mentioned earlier, we have the title page. This will contain your title, the title of your research proposal, your own affiliation, and so on and so forth. It identifies the project and researcher. For abstract, it summarizes your proposal between 150 to 300 words. It has to be clear, concise, and well detailed, but not too much. It has to be concise. Introduction. It presents background, relevance, and objectives to your study. Literature review. It reviews existing work and identifies gaps. Like I said earlier, if you look at a research article at the recommendation section, there you see new things that should be worked on, and that could be your own gray area, which you can decide to research on. From there, you can develop research questions. Conceptual framework, it maps relationship between variables. Yes. So, also expected your methodology. This will outline your design, data collection, analysis, and of course your ethical approval. Very essential here. Expected result, you must state clearly your anticipated findings and significance. The timeline must be well spelled out. That is, the phased plan of activities must be clearly stated. Budget, itemized costs and justification. You list out all your needs and then you justify the costs. References, cited sources in consistent format. Writing a strong abstract and literature review essential. This is an abstract. Your abstract must contain research problem clearly stated with evidence, your facts and figures of the research problem, well and clearly stated, objectives, methodology, expected outcome. However, it should be kept concise, clear, and compelling, between 150 to 300 words. Your literature. This summarizes the key studies and debates, the debate around your area, your scope of study. It identifies gaps or controversies, positions your research within the field, use recent peer-reviewed sources. Okay? A conceptual framework tailored for biomedical sciences. What is a conceptual framework? It is a visual and narrative map of key concepts and their relationships. It guides your experimental design and interpretation. Yes? So why does it matter? In public health, for example, it links social or environmental exposures to biological outcomes. In physiology, for example, it connects organ-level function to molecular mechanisms. In biochemistry, it maps pathways like your oxidative stress pathway, inflammation, or metabolism. Now, let's look at examples of this conceptual framework with respect to their different disciplines. For example, in public health, a typical example of a framework is the relationship between environmental toxins, and oxidative stress and organ damage, how environmental toxin will lead to oxidative stress, which in turn lead to organ damage. A rat model that can be used to study this is rats exposed to pollutants. In physiology, for instance, the relationship between salt intake, how it leads to renal function, which in turn leads to blood pressure regulation. A typical model for this is exposing rats to high salt diet. In biochemistry, for example, we look at the framework of lead exposure, how lead exposure leads to elevated reactive oxygen species, which in turn lead to lipid peroxidation. So a typical model for this is, rats injected with lead acetate. Now, building out your framework, you need to define your system. For example, are you using liver, kidney, or the brain? You must identify the variables, that is the dosage, yes, the concentration of whatever it is you are using, the biomarkers to be measured, and then the outcomes. Map relationships. For example, how high-fat diet will increase this necrotic factor, and which in turn leads to increase in insulin resistance. Include relevance. For example, findings may inform human metabolic syndrome. Okay, all these are how to build your conceptual framework. Hypothesis development, on the other hand, what makes a strong hypothesis? It should be clear, testable, and falsifiable. It must be grounded, well grounded in theory. Which theory is surrounding your work, or a prior evidence as a foundation to your study. Defines variables and expected relationships. Hypothesis development. Let's give examples with respect to various disciplines. For example, in biochemistry, hypothesis could be like lead exposure increases lipid peroxidation in rat brain tissue. This type of hypothesis is directional because we are saying this leads to that. Yeah, this will increase that. So that is directional. In physiology, for example, a typical example of hypothesis sounds like there is no difference in these necrotic factor levels between treated and control rats. This is a biomarker, okay, of inflammation. Yes, so we are saying there is no difference in these biomarker levels between a treated rat and a control rat. That is a null hypothesis. In public health, we can say rats exposed to this particulate matter show altered glucose metabolism. That particular hypothesis is associative because we are saying rats exposed to this matter show altered glucose metabolism. Let's go to biochemistry again. A typical example of a causal hypothesis sounds like vitamin C reverses oxidative damage in lead-exposed rats. So these are hypotheses that can be tested. Methodology. Like I said earlier, this is the most important section of a research proposal. You must be very, very meticulous about it. You must clearly state your research design. Is it experimental, observational, or mixed method? Are you going to use a qualitative or quantitative method? You must justify whatever method you want to use. The model organism you're going to use, you must state clearly the species, the strain, age, and sex of the model organism. How you are going to collect your data must be clearly stated. The biomarkers you are going to measure, histological studies you're going to do, behavioral tests, how you're going to do them, all must be well referenced. Still under methodology, you're going to tell us how you're going to analyze your data that you collected here. What statistical test are you going to be doing? Which software are you using? Are you using SPSS or GraphPad Prism? And also very, very key and important is ethical approval, ethics. Animal care protocols, approvals, humane endpoints, all these are very, very essential. You must obtain an ethical approval from your institutional research ethics committee before you commence your research. Expected results and contribution. What will your study uncover? What will it show? Academic, policy, or clinical significance? How will it fill a gap or challenge existing knowledge? Work plan. You must have a timeline, okay? You must have a time frame for each of your objectives, how you're going to achieve all, a chart or phased schedule. Example of the phases: literature review, when you're going to do this, animal experiments, when you're going to do this, when will you finish, data analysis, at what point will you do this, writing and dissemination, at what point will you write up and disseminate your results. Research for budget, itemize costs, animal reagents, software, travel, everything must be well stated, and how much you're going to spend on each. You must justify each expense, and they must align with funding body requirements. Whichever organization you are writing your research proposal to, you must abide by their rules, and your budget must align with their requirements. Your references are very key. All your in-text citation, the bibliography at the end of the day should follow a consistent citation style, whether you are using APA, MLA, or Vancouver, or Harvard. Whichever one you are using, make sure you stick with it till the end. Include only cited sources. Whatever you have cited within the text of your proposal is what should appear at the end of the day. Use reference managers like Zotero, Mendeley, or EndNote. Additional tips include: make sure you align your objectives with your methods. Make sure they align. Be clear, concise, and persuasive in your writing. Address feasibility and ethics. Very important. Seek feedback and revise to fine-tune your write-up. At the end of the day, you are going to have a very fantastic research proposal. Thank you for listening. I remain yours, Dr. Ajagun-Ogunleye, Olufemi Mulkah of LASUCON. Have a nice day.